Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. I'm sharing my screen and you should see some white background. I don't know if you can also see me or if it's just limited to the screen, but let the games begin. As we were just mentioned in our prep talk, pre-talk before we began our official meeting, I mentioned that I work for the Swiss Federal Institute of Intellectual Property. Swiss Federal Institute should be more or less self-explanatory, but what the heck is intellectual property? I'm so glad you asked, because just by chance, I prepared a webinar on this topic on intellectual property. And intellectual property, it's not only the title of the Swiss Federal Institute of Intellectual Property, which is quite a mouthful, but also intellectual property raises some, at least eyebrows, if not bewildered, unknown, and clueless faces. So I asked kind of ChatGPT, what is intellectual property? And it shows that also ChatGPT doesn't really know what intellectual property is if you just look at the picture and see what intellectual became. And it's also obvious that the fact checkers and the wokeness filter has left, given that there are only male persons attending the meeting. But that's beside the point. So, intellectual property. What are we going to talk about today? Here's the agenda of today. There are 5 points. And to make Simon Sinek happy, we start with why. Why is intellectual property important? Second, what is intellectual property? Then we continue, how does IP work? So IP is a short form for intellectual property. Otherwise, I would spend 24 minutes of my 25 minutes only reiterating intellectual property as such, so IP. Point number 4, specific topic for Switzerland, it's Swissness and associated with geographical indications. And finally, there's a Q&A session. And if you are well behaving, there's a bonus point, number 6. But so far, because I'm not quite sure how you do, it's not on the agenda yet. Start with point number 1. Why is IP important? And it's quite easy. If you talk to Swiss people, they only have 3 topics to talk about. And we start with the first one. The other 2 will also show up in the meeting today. And that is money. Swiss people love to talk about money. And it's, without going into details here in this chart, it shows that IP is tremendously important for the Swiss economy. Of the foreign trade that Switzerland has, 82% of the goods that are being traded, they are IP intensive. It's only 18% that are non-IP intensive. So please don't tell a certain president, otherwise we will soon have tariffs here. So, and it shows that the IP intensive sectors are, shouldn't come to a huge surprise, mainly pharmaceutical industry. And the other remaining 20% also watches, precision tools, machine tools, and to a lower degree, vehicles. So very short, you can make lots and lots of money if you have lots of IP, if you have an IP intensive industry. But having said this, and I hope I've got you hooked up on the topic, that you want to learn how to make lots and lots of money. What is IP? Do you have any idea? What comes into your mind when we talk about IP?
Books.
Nothing. Sorry?
Books.
Books. Okay. Yeah. Good one.
Patents.
Patents. Excellent.
Copyright.
Yes.
Any form of media that you have specifically created new that you're concerned about other people having access to and using.
Okay, indeed. So it seems you're already quite knowledgeable, so we can cut the webinar short to a 3-minute talk. But please let me continue nonetheless. This is IP. And indeed, we see here the books. And they were just mentioned. Books. And this is kind of symbol here for copyright. So the right of the author is being protected. And left to the books, we see the watch. What might the watch be? What kind of copy, what kind of IP rights are included here?
Software that runs it. The watch.
That's
Manufacturing know-how?
well, it's an old style watch,
Yeah.
no software. There are various IP rights included. For example, the how is it called? The clockwork, I think is a proper term in English. So the clockwork, it's a kind of patent. How does the clockwork work? That's a patent. And if you, I don't know if it's visible, there's also the brand name of the company who produced that watch. That's a trademark. And then we have also the design of the watch. So 3 different IP rights are included here. And then you see below the watch, the ABB. That's a major Swiss company. So it's also signed for a trademark. To the right, you see the Nescafé cup. What IP rights do we have here?
Brand?
That's again the
name?
brand name, so trademark indeed. And let's see, it's somehow not visible here because I see all the faces here. Let's put it over there. Over to the right. Somehow repetitive, but let's see if we can add more to it. The Coca-Cola bottle. What kind of IP rights do you assume there to be?
Component?
Your formulation.
The formulation is one, but first we got again the Coca-Cola writing. So again, the trademark. And so the Coca-Cola bottles come in a special shape.
Yeah.
It's again the design of the bottle. And someone mentioned the kind of formulation, how this gooey, yucky stuff inside there is being produced. That is a special kind of IP. It's a trade secret. You might know that it's kept, the formulation, how to produce Coca-Cola is kept secret, which has a benefit to some degree, but also a disadvantage. If it comes out, if someone, I don't know, steals the secret formula and sells it, it's out in the public and it's not really protected. There's no real law for trade secrets, as we have legal basis for patents, for trademarks, for copyright and so on, but not for trade secret. So you have Coca-Cola has to have their own Fort Knox where the secret formulation is stored in. And we can continue with where the kind of scheme or the drawing of the factory down there, the kind of process, how something is being produced, that can also be patented. And with the pills up there, the chemistry or the pharmaceuticals, there's also a special right, kind of the protection of the test data. If you want to bring a medical product to the market, you have to submit test data. This test data is also protected. And then we have the salad. Why the salad? Can you protect nature? Can you claim that you pick up a daffodil and want to, you bring it to a USPTO and want to register it on your right? No, you can't. But if you genetically modify the salad, that it comes with additional benefits, then it's a modification and this can be patented. And we have down there the cheese, Le Gruyere. You see this little red and black, it's said AOP. We come later onto it. It's kind of geographical indication. If some product comes from a certain region, so this fact that it comes from that region, that can also be protected. And so the real Gruyere can only come from the relevant region in Switzerland and from nowhere else. If you can't produce a Gruyere cheese in Ireland, for example. And then we have in the lower right corner, the Swiss cross and the coat of arms from Geneva, a major city here in Switzerland. These are also kind of geographic indications that are protected. And I think finally, the source code and the domain name. So source code also falls under copyright. And the domain name is an associated right. So you see, it's a huge variety of topics and aspects that fall under intellectual property. That's what we just mentioned. And now the question, since you are now semi-experts on IP, you know what kind of IP rights exist, but how does IP work? It's quite easy. That's the way how IP works. If you have a patent, this does not mean that you get automatically rich or that you have a right to do something. To the contrary, you have a right to exclude someone else. You, as a patent holder, have a right to exclude others from using your invention. So, for example, we have very knowledgeable people, very smart people in our club. Let's say James. James, just a few days ago, wrote me that he invented a car after 5 years of constantly working on it. He developed a car with 0 emissions. It runs on just 1 clove of garlic for 1,000 miles. It's a tremendously innovative car. And of course, because he worked 5 years, day and night, on developing this car, he now wants to reap the benefits. He can sell the car, let's say, for $80,000. And because you, apart from a few cloves of garlic, which you can pick up in Gilroy, you can drive with limitless with that car. So everyone is eager buying it. But unfortunately, we not only have very smart people in our club, but also very lazy and sneaky people. Sorry to single you out, Kyle, but you have heard about the invention that James made. So when you see this car, you reverse engineer it and produce it anew. And since you didn't spend 5 years working a day or night on inventing the car, you can sell it cheaper. You can sell it for 50,000 bucks and also make lots of money without having spent so much on developing and inventing the car. So, fellow Toastmaster, from a gut feelings, would that be fair if Kyle were allowed to sell that car?
No.
Kyle, no, we didn't ask you. We asked the rest. No, of course it would not be fair because James spent so much effort inventing that car. He should also be allowed to reap the benefits. And this is what IP is. IP, a patent right on this car, allows James to sell this car, and he's the only one who is allowed to sell the car. Nobody else is allowed to sell this car. But now the economists among us will cry foul. That's a monopoly, and a monopoly is something from hell, so it shouldn't be allowed. But here we come to the situation and the role of a patent or intellectual property in the broader sense. It's a kind of balance. 2 aspects of society, of economy are being balanced out. So first of all, just to reiterate, IP excludes other persons from using or commercially exploiting your invention, your IP right. And they address a market failure, which I just mentioned. The inventor spends lots of time, energy inventing something, others can easily exploit it. And to avoid this, a balance is being struck. The IP right owner is being granted a monopoly and can exploit it, but it's just for a limited period of time. And the inventor has also to publish his invention. Why that? If James puts it into public, how he developed the car that runs on a clove of garlic, others can read how he did this, and they can themselves build upon this idea and create more progress for society. So maybe they come up with an idea of an airplane that can fly twice around the world with just a clove of garlic. This would be a progress for society. The greater good would be enhanced, so to say. And they can make use of this invention, but only after the time-bound monopoly that is granted to the patent holder has expired. And this is the contract, and this is why one also says, okay, in this case, a time-limited monopoly is not contrary to the interest of the market. And for the question, how long does IP work? I just mentioned patent rights go for 20 years, trademarks for 10 years, but can be renewed. So for example, Coca-Cola, the brand name still exists and nobody else is allowed to use it because they constantly renew it. Designs have a different lifespan, copyright 50 years after the death of the author. different point. Where does IP work? It's only applicable for the jurisdiction, for the country where you register this IP right. For example, if James registered his Scarlet car in the US and gives a presentation here at the Toastmaster Club, I learn about it, and he registers his IP right, his patent only in the US, I can build a car here, produce it here, and sell it in all over Europe, or more or less all over the world except of the US, and James can do nothing about it. So IP right holders have to have a kind of IP strategy, patent strategy, where they decide where it's worthwhile registering the rights, because registering also comes with some costs, but it also prevents others from exploiting illegally your right. And here again, the problem that IP rights are only granted locally, while the flow of information is globally, worldwide. And finally, we started with Swiss love money. They really do. And now we get to the next 2 points, or 2 aspects that are also important for Switzerland. But before this, kind of as a warm up, we come to the Swissness. In general, the term Swiss, what comes in your mind when you hear the term Switzerland or Swiss?
Chocolate.
What kind of association do you have? Sorry?
Chocolate.
Chocolate, okay.
Neutrality.
Neutrality.
Banks.
Yes,
Watches.
indeed, yes.
Mountain climbing.
Okay. But also, I would say, in general, the attitude that you have when you hear the general feeling, it's more or less on the positive end of the side. Switzerland also stands for punctuality, quality, high standards. And this is very important also to the Swiss economy. That's an additional kind of soft benefit that Switzerland has. And Switzerland wants to protect it. And this is why a Swissness legislation has been was adopted to make sure that this name Switzerland is not being kind of diluted or exploited by companies, by persons who are not really associated with Switzerland. So only products that are being produced in Switzerland or services that are being offered by companies that are based in Switzerland can bear the name Switzerland or the Swiss cross. For example, so this made in Switzerland or even Swiss quality, Swiss recipe, Swiss style of Switzerland can only legally be used by Swiss persons or companies based here. And below there, you see the Matterhorn, the very iconic mountain. It's very representative of Switzerland. But what's the problem? For example, this product could also be found in one store. Swiss Navy strong mints. Well, for a landlocked country, the Swiss Navy probably very eagerly uses these mints. So it's, of course, some company tried to just to benefit from the positive association with Switzerland and put the name Swiss in and use the Swiss cross. You could see, well, that's a nuisance. There are bigger problems to it, and there are indeed. And briefly, to jump out of my presentation, Marianne, I can't see the lights or the time. Could you please give me an indication how much time we have left?
You're at 19 minutes.
Okay. Swiss punctuality, I am gonna rush up. Well, other problems are indeed a bigger problem when it comes to banks. There was, for example, one financial fraudster who set up a bank in Kyrgyzstan called Kyrgyz Swiss Bank. And of course, this runs totally contrary to the interest of the Swiss Banking Association. And not only the name, but also uses a Swiss cross here. And if Swiss banks were all of a sudden being associated with kind of failing banks that offer dodgy services and so on, that's nothing in our interest. And this is why we, as the Swiss Federal Institute of Intellectual Property, stepped in. And after a long battle, where luckily able to stop him. This one here, Narodny Tsvety, that's by coincidence again, Kyrgyzstan. On the left side, a flower shop. The right one, it's I think a 24-hour cafe in Bishkek. That's the address where, according to web page, the Swiss Kyrgyz Science University is located. They had an excellent web page, and the tremendously courses they offered, studied degree programs. They had reviews by alumni. With a small problem, according to the web pages, it just opened 1 year ago, had already alumni. They had a great picture of the campus. That was a picture of Cupertino, Apple headquarter. So all very fishy. But again, here we were able to stop this company using the name Swiss. And also with the Swiss Navy refresher, we were able to step in and know the Royal Mints. But now, Swiss chocolate. Is Swiss chocolate still Swiss chocolate? You probably know Toblerone, Swiss milk chocolate with honey and almond nougat. This comes even in bigger sizes, so the more chocolate, the better. They're happy as a Swiss. And second point, money, chocolate. But here, Toblerone had to change its brand name or its brand and also the wrapping. On top, you see the original part. On the lower part of the picture, you see the changed one. Why was this change necessary? Because the company that produces Toblerone decided to no longer produce in Switzerland, but they moved to Slovakia. As you see on the top, it's Swiss milk chocolate. And in the lower one, it's only established in Switzerland. So they were no longer allowed to use the name Switzerland. They complied with the legislation and changed their wrapping. Also, you see the mountain has changed from the Matterhorn on the left to just kind of fictive mountain, the triangle, as a form of the chocolate. And now something that you might have noticed in the supermarkets and stores, Swiss cheese. I'm sorry, I have to tell you, there is no thing as a Swiss cheese. These are products that are being sold in the US. That is no real Swiss cheese. This is a Swiss cheese, Le Gruyère, on the right, Emmentaler cheese. They come from certain regions in Switzerland, and these kind of regions, we had it in the beginning, they have a kind of protection. So Le Gruyère cheese, you see there on the top of the triangle, there's a red part. It's a sign that is protected geographical indication. And only the cheese that's being produced in that region is allowed to be called Le Gruyère or Emmentaler. But there's no such thing as a Swiss cheese. It's only kind of a generic term that's being used in Switzerland. But if you want to have a real, higher quality cheese, you have to pay a bit more and go for cheese that bears these kind of symbols of protected geographical indication. In light of time and with regard to my excellent presentation skills, I think you have no questions, so you get no answers. And finally, that was a fun fact. You certainly know who this person is. He is a former colleague of mine. Albert Einstein worked at the Swiss Federal Institute of Intellectual Property, or its predecessor. He was a kind of patent examiner at the Swiss IP office. So another German who migrated to Switzerland, and what followed after that is well known. But rest assured, I'm going to invite you when I get my Nobel Prize. Thank you very much, fellow Toastmasters.